Is there a different media standard when it comes to covering Donald Trump? Well, I've been reporting a story that I think demonstrates quite clearly that there is. Look at a news story in Politico and a Washington Post editorial on the subject of Donald Trump and what is described as a potential propaganda arm. And what you see in these two pieces are phrases like, Donald Trump could be gaining control of an unfettered propaganda arm within the U.S. government. He might finally have his own Trump TV. He could install a right-wing ideologue at taxpayer expense. So let's drill down a little bit on this. We're talking here about all of the agencies that broadcast around the world, independent journalism designed to penetrate totalitarian societies and closed societies. Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and the one named the Cuban. There's one for the Middle East and all of that. These are programs that have been around for decades. Now, there was a bipartisan law that was just passed that President Obama is going to sign into law that changed the structure of these agencies. It's not really that complicated. There's a 9-member broadcasting board of governors that oversees VOA and these other agencies. It's been widely criticized by both parties as being ineffective and cumbersome and incompetent. They're part-timers, they don't meet very often, and it's really hurt the performance of these agencies. So who supported this? Well, Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, said this broadcasting board of governors is practically defunct. The House Foreign Affairs Committee, the Republican chairman, Ed Royce, has been pushing these reforms to get rid of the Broadcasting Board of Governors and replace it with a single chief executive appointed by the president who would have a more hands-on leadership of these agencies, which we need, by the way, to combat ISIS propaganda, Russian cyber hacking, and trouble spots around the world. The top Democrat on that Foreign Affairs Committee, Ellen Engel, he supports it. So do other Democrats. So does the current chairman of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. In short, this was a bipartisan effort to make these agencies work better by having one full-time professional run the show. It was announced a year ago, and as this went through the House Senate Conference Committee, it wasn't news, it wasn't controversial, nobody was upset about it. But suddenly, Donald Trump wins the election, and now you have the piece in Politico. Now you have the Washington Post editorial. For example, the Washington Post says that Trump will be able to install the editor of Breitbart News, or another propagandist of his choice, to direct how the United States is presented to the world. And there's some hope that maybe he'll appoint a serious journalist rather than a political loyalist or an alt-right ideologue. So all of this is about Donald Trump. If Hillary Clinton were about to become president, you wouldn't be seeing these stories because, after all, as I say, this was supported by both parties, by the Obama administration. The Obama administration supported this, and so did the head of the current Board of Governors, and so did many Democrats on the Hill. It wasn't controversial. So now, when you have President-elect Trump in line to make this appointment, suddenly it's like, oh, gee, this is terrible. He could turn this into propaganda. What will Steve Bannon do? What kind of alt-right crazy person could he appoint? In other words, it doesn't have to do with the law or the underlying issues or the structural reform. It all has to do with a sort of a fear that Donald Trump might do such and such. And by the way, whoever Donald Trump does decide to make the chief executive of all of these agencies and the Board of Governors, the board will no longer exist in terms of its 9 members, has to be approved by the Senate, has to be subject to Senate confirmation. So if he really appointed somebody controversial, there could be pushback. So all of this, I think, when I cover this stuff, I always ask the question, well, how would this be covered differently if it was a Democratic president-elect as opposed to a Republican president-elect? Now that you have fear and loathing, and suddenly it's a 5-alarm fire about the fact that President-elect Trump could name the new head of an agency that's been streamlined with support from Democrats and even Hillary Clinton, it makes you wonder where else the new president-elect might not be held to the same standard as if somebody else was about to move into the White House.